Hi everyone, I'm a classical pianist, piano teacher in Zurich, and no, it's not about Liszt this video, no, it's not Mozart, but who is this mysterious biggest genius of all time? Well, this time it's an Italian composer named Dante Michelangelo Benvenuto Ferruccio Busoni. Yes, I guess most of people didn't really hear about this composer. He's, I think, massively underrated. Let me explain you in 8 points why I think it's the biggest genius of all time since Bach. I'm actually in a Busoni phase, so since weeks I'm listening back to his concerto that I knew from before. And I was not a huge fan before because I listened to some pieces and it didn't click so much. I found it complicated, heavy, too dense, too dissonant. But then I went back to the concerto, I listened 20 times to the concerto, I played it a bit, sight reading, I was looking at the score, analyzing a bit. And then I thought, this work is so addictive, it's so amazing, like the guy is an absolute genius. Why? Like how come, right? So I wanted to know, like I always do, I wanted to know his other works. I started to listen to his elegy, to his Indian notebook, to his, he has preludes, this is young works. This I'm not such a fan still. Yeah. And then I discovered a whole new world and I thought, oh my God, this I have to share because it's really amazing. So first thing that really impressed me and that I like with many, like with Liszt or for example other people, it's that Busoni had many phases, he was interested in many things. Like he was a philosopher, so he was thinking about life, writing stuff about this. He was of course a composer, a great composer. He was a virtuoso of piano first actually. Busoni had a piano career like Liszt actually, and after a while stopped because he didn't like the traveling, the concert experiences so much. So he wanted to focus more on composing and exploring future. He was a writer, so he wrote about music of the future. He even predicted electronic music when it was not existing at all. For this, he was a visionary, so he had like very advanced ideas. He was a conductor, so he conducted his pieces. He wrote nice stuff for orchestra. Berceuse Elegiac that he wrote for his mother when she died. There is also a piano version. He wrote operas, so he probably conducted the operas himself. He was a teacher. He had like a lot of students. He was very charismatic. He was known to be laughing very loud, was a very expansive person, expansive like from expanding, right? I don't know if you say it right. He was an editor. He edited other people's works. He was a caricature, so apparently he also could sketch very well. He was making sketches, caricature about colleagues. So that's the first main point. I always like people who has broad interest because I'm a believer in knowing many things in different domains helps you to specialize even better in what you do. Your brain develops a bit better and you get better at what you are doing actually. Number two, and that's the thing you have to speak about, is his piano concerto. So his piano concerto is just incredible. Some people don't like it because it's heavy and long and everything, but that's only when you first listen to it. So Busoni is a very difficult composer like Mahler and Wagner, where you need time before you understand the language, the harmony, before you recognize patterns and melodies, and before you start to like it. But then it totally flips. Once you get this stuff, once you recognize patterns and you understand the work and how you compose it, it gets super addictive. And it's the same thing with Mahler and Wagner, by the way. I have periods where I'm studying Mahler or Wagner and I get incredibly addicted. So I have the music in my head all the time, day and night for months in a row, and it's not leaving my head. That's something I have with this kind of composers. Also, Busoni wanted to divide the octave. He said it should be possible or interesting to divide the octave in more than 12 tones, 12 half tones, because he wanted to explore this microtonal stuff, right? And you can feel this in his concertos because he's always like getting these effects of fluidity, and actually breaking an octave in notes or in half tones breaks this fluidity, right? So you can feel in his writing that he wants to get more fluidity in what he's writing, and he's trying with what he has. So his concerto is a work of, it's very long, it's probably the longest concerto, one of the longest concerto ever written. It's 70 minutes, that's already something special. It's in different parts, it has different moods. It's one of the most dense and complicated concerto to play. There are places, for example, there is a very good recording of Hamelin playing this, of course. No better pianist as Hamelin could play this. He has this very fast scale in chords. So they have this cadence here with the chords, like, I don't even can sight read this. thought like, oh my God, like this is just like impossible to play. And it's not, again, it's not about the, oh wow, it's difficult, that's amazing. It's not difficult, it's amazing. It's this incredible tense effect it's creating. Like you get goosebumps when he's playing this passage, right? And you just don't believe it's possible, and it's sounding, and it's possible, and this mix of stuff makes it just incredibly addictive. And then there is this whole Italian movement where there is a kind of tarantelle that gets totally crazy. It's ending with a choir, so it gets very spiritual toward the end. Like the beginning is a big overture, like a big monument. The fact that it's long also gives it the possibility to have many different characters. It's like many pieces in one, right? So the concerto is 183 pages. So one of the things also Busoni did, he experimented with many things in composition, and one of the things he experimented with is rhythm. He write this stuff here, 6/4, and between stuff he write 18/8. Now if you count here the rhythm, I will show you. So the first one would be through 8 notes, then you have 3, then you have 3, then you have 3, 3, and then again 2. And if you add this, it makes 12. So why writing 18/8? I didn't get it. Now the 6/8 I get, it's if the crotchets, if the 8 notes are triplets, you have actually 6 quarters, right? So someone actually on YouTube told me that's probably he wanted to the first 8 note the first quarter and the last quarter are probably dotted quarter, but since he will switch all the time between these triplets and this normal rhythm, that's why he wrote both, because it would be a switch. So you actually have to count the first one as a triplet of 8, so like a dotted quarter, right? So that's the orchestra part doing. And then this whole rhythm stays for the whole movement. Number 3, big discovery that made me totally get fan of Busoni is his Fantasia contrappuntistica. So most of his titles are in Italian. This work is that's a work I didn't like so much for a long time. I tried several times to listen to it. Many people mention it on social media, on YouTube all the time, and I thought, yeah, whatever. It's not because it's the most difficult work in the world that it's interesting, right? That's something I'm not really interested in itself. But then, I started studying the score. So there is a recording of Igor Levit, so I thought that's a great recording. Let's listen to this. So the Fantasia starts like this. Improvisation, freestyle. Then comes this chromatic stuff here. I listened and I thought like, oh, I don't get it. It's so dissonant, messy. What is this thing? And it's 30 minutes. I listened different times, and then I took the score. I listened with the score, and then I saw, oh, there are fugues actually. And I heard there were fugue, but I didn't get what is a fugue. What's the point? What's the point of doing a 30 minutes long fugue, you know? So the thing is, in this work, he started as a fantasy, so he started improvisation. And then in his improvisation comes actually themes from other works. That's another point I will mention later that I like in Busoni works. He gets other stuff. So you have this chromatic thirds going up, which is something he has in different pieces. And then comes a fugue, a first fugue, with just a thing that's just a normal theme like Bach would do, right? Then comes a second fugue with another theme that just with no transition, right? Just going to the next fugue with another subject called in English. And I think the second subject is BACH, so Bach name so I think the second subject is the art of fugue, first subject Bach is using. So he's using Bach subjects because he was a huge Bach fan, I will mention also later. Then actually both subjects mix at the end of this fugue, which is making it a double fugue, which is making it even more interesting and crazy to write, right? Then comes the third fugue, and the third fugue is Bach name, BACH, right? Again, dedicated to Bach. And at the end of these fugues, all three subjects mix. So it's increasing in intensity and complexity, right? And it gets like in the beginning, it's sounding like Bach fugues, actually very well written, like it's totally worth Bach. So everyone agrees that Bach is the greatest fugue writer ever. Well, I just discovered the second one. It's Busoni, definitely, because there are fugues in all his works, in most of his works. And then at the end of this fugue, he's mixing all three voices. Yeah. Then comes a choral, also very Bach-like. With the choral, he again mixes themes of the Fantasie. And then comes the last fugue. And for the last fugue, he's using the theme of Bach Art of Fugue, last theme. So Bach wrote this big work of 1 hour, more or less, with one theme going through many fugues, like changing the theme in all directions and making different fugues with the same theme. And at the end of his, the last fugue he didn't finish. There's an unfinished fugue at the end where he introduced a new theme, and Busoni is using this theme for his last fugue. And then at the end, everything mixes, and it gets a crazy work that these peaks coming builds up all the time. And well, yeah, that's just, and when you think about the difficulty of writing a fugue, that's something. So the fugue is the most difficult form to write, right? It's the most intellectually challenging work to compose. Well, he just writes four fugues in a row, all connected with themes going across everything. It's just amazing. And once you can recognize this stuff, so when you listen to the work, so I listened with the score, I try to play the themes at the piano myself to have a better understanding of the themes. Once you can identify these themes, it gets really fun to listen. It gets really, again, addictive to listen, because you realize, oh my God, he's flipping the theme now. You hear the theme in the other direction. So from up to down, right? And and then you see this theme, and then you see a beginning of a theme coming, and then he drops, and then you can follow the whole stuff, and then it gets fascinating. And then I thought, what a headache must it be to learn this stuff, because learning a fugue is difficult. I mean, learning 20 fugue is more difficult, of course. It's more work, but you have breaks in between, right? This is a 30-minute piece with no breaks, with 4 fugues in a row and 4 heavy fugues. It's not like Baroque fugues, it's like romantic, post-romantic fugues with a lot of chords and octaves and everything. It's I don't know, yeah, I think that's really a challenge to learn. So that's just for this already. You should agree, Busoni is a huge genius. Then these two people. And then that is also always on the limit of getting polytonal. You have clash of chords, right? And then comes the first fugue, and the theme is this. Second fugue is this. That's the end of the last theme of Bach Art of Fugue. And I think the first one is apparent to the first theme. Then you have BACH. Yeah, I forgot. Then comes an intermezzo with variation. So he's introducing variation between fugues, variation 2, 3. And by the way, variation is something Bach is doing in his Art of Fugue too. He's variating the themes, right? The rhythm, most of them. Then you have a cadenza, which is a... And then comes Fugue 4 with... with this from the choral we had before. Number 4 is what I said before. something very unique that I like, that I found amazing. I just noticed it in the first place. I noticed he uses the same stuff for different works. So there are like themes that come back in several works that you recognize. So, and he was believing in this, in having works, works always evolving. So he was always rewriting his works, making them better. And he was connecting all his works like it would be a big work. And there is something, Balzac, it's a French writer from the 19th century, friend of Victor Hugo. He wrote 90 romans with characters coming back in all the books at different ages, which is also unique in literature, and it's just amazing because you have to keep track of all this stuff. You have to remember who is what he did, you know, what's his past, what's his future and everything. Busoni is doing the kind of same stuff in music, which, as far as I know, nobody else ever did. So it's not the same like Bach, of course, used BACH, and this comes in his work in different places, but Busoni expanded this a bit to general themes or tricks or harmonies or stuff. Number 5 is Busoni was actually, so I think Busoni is actually the biggest genius and the end of a cycle. You have Bach, the biggest genius of all time, to start, and you have Busoni to stop. It's the end of music because Busoni was introducing modal and polytonal stuff. Not completely, like he didn't really use polytonality as far as I know, or as far as I understood, but he's getting these effects of having for a short time a polytonal impression, right? Because he uses different tonal centers at the same time, and this gives this feeling of polytonality, right? And then in his Indian books, he used modal scales actually, so it's also quite modern way to use. He wrote a lot about the future of music. He was thinking a lot about this. He was talking with his students about the future of music, and he experimented a lot in his music too about this. And I think that's a great stuff too, like composers who, and that's also why I think it's the last composer, because after him, classical music, tonal music basically stopped and we switched to something else, right? So I thought for a long time that Wagner and Mahler were the last one of the romantics or the classical composer, but Busoni is a step further, and or maybe the same as Mahler, and is for this the last one. And the fact that he's writing fugues and being so close to Bach and doing it as well as Bach, I think it's a nice idea to think this is a cycle that just closed with Busoni. And by the way, it's a B. His name starts with B. So for a long time we had these 3 B legends. People like to say you had Bach, Beethoven, Brahms. Busoni is a 4th B to close the cycle. So number 6 is, I honestly think he's the best fugue writer since Bach. So that's the thing, everyone kind of agrees. Mozart, Beethoven were a bit scared of writing fugues, I read somewhere, because they were afraid to be compared to Bach, because Bach was really a fugue specialist. He wrote many fugues and they're all amazing. Well, I think Busoni matched this totally, and maybe even get a step further because it's getting mixed with modern music, with romantic, post-romantic music. In his sonatinas also very modern work, worth listening. There are very often small fugues coming, or not always fugues, but sometimes just contrapuntic writings. In his Fantasia, of course, fugue. In his concerto, there are stuff like contrapuntic fugue stuff. In his opera, Dr. Faust, there's also a lot of contrapunctus in English. I'm not sure how I say. Like in his toccata, there's a fugue at the end. Like there are fugues everywhere in his work, and they are all really good. Like, so then there is this argument of Beethoven and Mozart and Brahms also wrote fugues. Like Brahms wrote a fugue in his German Requiem or in other pieces. Beethoven has two fugues at the end of his 31 sonata. He writes, but there are nice fugues. There are, of course, genius fugue, but you don't have this feeling they match Bach, or it feels a bit less. Or like Liszt wrote a fugue too in a sonata, but it's not really a fugue, right? It's a fugue-ish stuff. It's a fugato, or it's a contrapuntus thing. But it's not a really full fugue like Bach was doing. And actually Busoni is doing this. He's doing these fugues on an incredibly high level, and they sound amazing to me. And by the way, Busoni was a great transcriber of Bach. He made transcriptions of Bach, like tons of it. It's actually, that's why he's known for, and that's really also why he's less known for his own compositions, because his transcriptions from Bach are so great. He's kind of he dedicated his life to transcribe works of Bach because it's the composer he probably admired the most. And very often composer gets a tag, right? You want to know a composer. Bach is the fugue writer, Mozart is the opera writer, Beethoven is the sonata writer, Brahms is this, Liszt is that, Chopin is like this, right? Chopin is the nocturne writer. People, strangely enough, wants to put one label on someone and it gets there. Liszt was the piano virtuoso, was not a composer, right? Like for many people that's how it is, and it's wrong. Liszt was an amazing composer. And then Busoni is this transcriber, but Busoni wrote, I think, 300 works, so maybe 20 Bach transcriptions, I don't know, but so it's a very little part of his work. And that's my 7th point. The reason why he's massively underestimated, I think, is because of this, because of his Bach transcriptions, and because of his labeling of being a transcriber, and also because his work are so difficult to get into it. It's kind of a barrier that most of people don't. Even me, I'm 40. It took me 30 years to get there, and it took me a lot of knowledge, education in music generally to get there. I studied a bit Scriabin, which is also a crazy composer, and step by step I came to Busoni, and then I once at 40 decided to do this step and to start to study his work and know more, right? And it took me a lot of effort. Like I had to play the works, I had to listen 20 times to each work, I had to listen to most of his work to start to get it. So it's a very difficult music to enter, more difficult than probably most other work, also by its complexity, its density. I think that's the reason also why he's not so famous and why he's massively underestimated. So like this labeling stuff, and then you have this impenetrable side of his work. That's something Liszt actually suffered too. Liszt was also someone who was doing many things, who are writing different genres, who changes his writing during his lifetime, who was a pianist, who was a conductor, who was a writer too actually. And when people are good in many stuff comes like this, it gets blur and confusing for people to know what is the guy good at actually. Well, they were good at most of stuff they were doing, and that's not. I think people prefer simple stuff, so they prefer Chopin is a good piano composer, is a very romantic and melodic composer, and that's it. And we can stick to this. And he did only this, so I think that's easier to like and admire. And then, as I said in the beginning, last point, and why I also admire him a lot. He was probably the biggest, the most famous Liszt player, and I was reading somewhere listening to a documentary that he played 6 Liszt programs in a row with 6 different Liszt programs in a row, which is a lot. He played. There is recordings on YouTube where he plays Feu Follet, where he plays transcriptions of Liszt. He actually finished also a transcription of Liszt. The one on Figaro from Mozart. Liszt didn't finish, but Busoni finished. He did his own version of La Campanella and I think other stuff of Liszt. He edited Liszt scores. Actually, I have the Liszt etudes edited by Busoni. So again, I said he's an editor. So he was first famous for playing Liszt, other stuff too, of course. He was first a concert tour playing Liszt, got noticed by this. So also being one of the best Liszt performer ever is a passport for everything, right? If you are able to do this, you are, for sure, you're at least not a bad pianist, right? So yeah, these are my points. Like, I'm totally obsessed by Busoni for the moment. I needed to share this in this video. I really honestly feel this, like I'm not exaggerating it, it's not for the click that I'm saying this. I really think he's the biggest genius of all time for all the 8 reasons I just said. And you might disagree, and maybe I'm overexcited. I'm just sharing my feelings for the moment, my impressions and my thinking about the guy for the moment. And of course, being a musician myself, having studied the work, I think I can express my opinion knowing what I'm speaking about. Now, let me know what you think. Of course, it's always subjective to say someone is a genius, and even the term genius is a bit subjective, doesn't mean so much. There were all genius, and all different geniuses, like Liszt, Mozart, Brahms, Beethoven. They were all very accomplished, amazing composers. And it's a bit silly to rank them, makes no point. It's just I'm sharing this feeling of oh my god, I'm so amazed. I hope you like it. See you next video.